What's up, folks? This is Coach Isham, strength and conditioning specialist. And before I begin my analysis, you need to hear this. If you are tuning in seeking an explanation to something along the lines of how it was scripted or how it was done for the money, then you can stop right here, because you ain't gonna like it. So if you're open to hearing a different take, I promise you this will be interesting, or at least decent. But if you don't want to think otherwise, bye. And 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, for the rest of you that are still here, here's the analysis. By the way, this is really me, but the analysis is AI voiceover generated. Enjoy.
Okay, mic working. Okay, let's go. We're going to kick things off with the question that everybody has been shouting and screaming about over the past few days. How the hell did Jake Paul, a YouTuber, a nobody in the world of boxing, defeat Mike Tyson, who is a legendary figure of that world? To break it down, this analysis was done from two perspectives, the physical and the mental. We're going to start with Jake Paul because there's a lot to unpack there before moving to Mike Tyson. And to finish it off, we'll see what are the possible implications for this fight happening and ending up the way it ended. So, Jake Paul, can we consider him a boxer? Let's go into a few details about his resume as a boxer, and you be the judge. So he's been boxing for 4 years now, and his first professional debut was in Jan 2020 against another YouTuber. We can say it was an even match of some sorts. I mean, none of them was a boxer, but what transpired from this fight? Jake Paul won by TKO. And if you don't know what that means, winning by TKO means that you fucked up the other guy so bad, the doctor had to step in and say, no more. So they were evenly matched, two nobodies in the realm of boxing for all that we care. I mean, it didn't look like a professional boxing match at all. It was more like a hood scrub. Except that it didn't take place in a parking lot or some alley somewhere. It was in a professional boxing ring. But nevertheless, it was a knockout, and that's still impressive. I mean, if you were watching a street fight and someone gets knocked out, you're going to be like, ooh, shrugging your face and all. I mean, it doesn't matter who knocks out who. A knockout in itself is something impressive. But let's move on to his second fight. On November of the same year, he fought Nate Robinson, a former NBA player. Okay, yes, he's not a boxer, but at that point, neither was Paul. But let's think about this for a second. He fought a guy that used to play in the NBA. As a strength and conditioning coach, let me tell you, man, people who make it to the NBA or any professional sport for that matter, are the creme de la creme when it comes to genetics. Are the best genetics out there, hands down, no doubt about it. What does that mean? It means they are naturally faster, stronger, and the whole shebang when it comes to physical abilities. Yet Paul knocked him out cold. I mean, what you gotta say about that? Okay, let's move on to his third fight, April 2021, 5 months after the Nate Robinson fight. He went against Ben Askren, a professional boxer, debuted in both the UFC and in one championship. And if you don't know one championship, it's arguably bigger than the UFC, at least in the number of views. So this guy, Ben, he was an Olympic. And let me put a line under the word Olympic and say it again. He was an Olympic wrestler. And let me say, if making it in professional sports means the best of the best when it comes to genetics, while making it to the Olympics is even better genetics. Now, I'm not disrespecting hard work and dedication, but how far this hard work will take you is determined by your genetics. So now he's fighting a professional, not to mention at the same weight class. And what the hell happens? Paul won first round TKO. Only 2 months after his fourth fight, August 2021, he went against Tyron Woodley, also a professional fighter. And he won again. And it doesn't stop here. 2 months after that, they went at it again, and Paul won again. And it must have been an easier fight than their first one, because the first time around, Paul won by a split decision. But in the second fight, he won by KO. But let me give you a closer analysis for the Tyson Woodley fights and show you how this kid's performance, Paul, is improving super fast. You see, as strength and conditioning coaches, we can pick up on changes in performance over time. Our eyes are trained for that. Observing how athletes evolve or when they plateau. I mean, it's a part of our job. Now, Jake Paul, in the first fight with Tyron Woodley, he was still not moving as a boxer. His footwork was sloppy and all over the place. But his footwork in the second fight, which was only 2 months, and I can't stress this enough, only 2 months after the first fight, his footwork was phenomenal in comparison. I mean, it felt like he swapped his leg with those of a boxer. For real. Moving on to his sixth professional fight with legend Anderson Silva, the Spider. Now, I don't need to highlight Anderson Silva's career. I mean, legend is all the introduction you need, really. And I think you know where this trend is going. Paul wins again. And here's a crazy thought. This is why I think Jake Paul really packs a punch, all right? Paul's been knocking out MMA fighters who are used to eating punches from 4-ounce gloves. Now, with 10-ounce gloves, boxing gloves, they offer more cushion. So you'd think they would hold up better, but nope. Paul still sends opponents to the canvas over and over again. Now, let me get it out of the way. I'm a Mike Tyson fan. I'm not a Jake Paul fan. But I always say you gotta give credit when credit is due. And by this point in Paul's career, I think Paul's credit was overdue, all right? But if it's still not, his next fight with Tommy Fury, it delivers it on a silver platter. I mean, after this fight, if by then I had any doubt left in my mind that Jake Paul is legit, that fight was the fight that put my doubts to rest. Even though Paul lost, this was his first fight with a legit professional boxer that no one can dispute. And not just any boxer, but a boxer that comes from a lineage of boxers. I mean, his dad was a boxer, his brother's Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, Big T, the heavyweight champion. Not to mention, a lot of his family were boxers. I mean, for Tommy Fury, that fight was more than just boxing. It was about preserving the respect for the sport. It was about preserving the legacy of the Fury dynasty. So make no mistake, Tommy Fury was going to war. I mean, the only two predictions you could have had for that fight were either a knockout or a knockout for Tommy. Period. And yes, Paul didn't win, but I mean, everybody thought that Tommy was gonna knock this YouTuber out. But he didn't do that. He didn't win by TKO, not even by unanimous decision. He won by a split decision. And to add insult to injury, he was knocked down by Jake Paul in the final round. I mean, what more do you need to recognize that this kid, Paul, is a legit boxer? Do you need them to turn green in the middle of the fight? Now, let's shift to the mental aspect. And we're not gonna dig deep into it, but we all know his story. Rich at a young age, thanks to his YouTube stardom, which thrusted him into a lifestyle that most people his age, or any age for that matter, could hardly comprehend. The sudden wealth, and for the YouTubers out there, you know the pressure to constantly engage and entertain your audience, like what I'm doing right now. I'm just kidding. No pressure, baby. No sweat. Anyways, all that must have created a turbulent environment in his life. And the sign that we, dare I say, the fans, were able to see from that turbulence is how his relationship with his brother, Logan, deteriorated at some point. Then living in Los Angeles, where his life probably started taking the wrong turn and seemed to spiral downward from there. But then boxing came to the picture and became more than just a sport for Jake. It was an exit, a lifeline, if you may. You know, the discipline, the focus, and the structure that this sport demands, I mean, mentally, it can change you as a person. And as a coach, I've heard the story a million times. It's almost as if training, and I mean committing to training, forces you to rebuild your identity. So I think boxing offered him clarity and purpose, and it transformed him from a social media sensation into a determined athlete with something to prove. And it seems like taking the Mike Tyson fight was just that, something to prove. It's like he was telling us, okay, you still don't think I'm a legit boxer? What if I take on the baddest boxer you know? Would you acknowledge me as a boxer then?
Thank you, Liam. That was Liam, and this is Carter, and I'll take it from here. So, what happened in the fight with Mike Tyson? Coming into the fight, it seemed from his face that the level of seriousness was low. It seemed like he was expecting an easy fight. Now, I don't know why he would expect that, but probably given Tyson's age, it seemed like he was expecting an easy fight. But the first time he got rocked by Tyson in the first round, the first punch that landed, you can see that he got spooked by Tyson's famous peekaboo style. He got spooked, and as if he was not expecting that kind of power from a 58-year-old. I mean, he got scared right away, and you can see that in his face. It flushed red right away. Because at that moment, he realized, holy shit, I'm in with a raging bull. This could end bad. But honestly, from third round onward, he was looking at Mike Tyson through his rearview mirror. He knew that Tyson had reached his age limitations, and it was obvious for all of us, not just him. And from there on, it was smooth sailing. Now, let's move on to Mike Tyson. Honestly, I almost feel shy to even talk about his track record. I mean, we are talking about Mike Tyson here. And if you know anything about him, you know the name Mike Tyson means bad motherfucker in the ring. All right? Now, as for me and the rest of y'all Tyson fans, we know the man struggled with a lot of demons in his life. He grew up in a rough neighborhood, the only criminal record with him being arrested about 40 times by the age of 13. That's crazy. And then, of course, the loss of Customato, which I think had the most negative impact on his life. And it doesn't stop there. There's the substance abuse, the bankruptcy, the toxic relationships with his ex-wife, Robin Givens, with Don King. I mean, the list goes on and on. But having been through all that, he managed to overcome and seek redemption. And we can see that. We can see that he is no longer the man defined by his youthful arrogance and aggression. We can see that he now carries himself with humility, with wisdom that he have earned through these life challenges. And we see it. We see it in his personality. We see it in his attitude. We see it in his calmness. We see that in his humbleness. So, why take on this fight, Mike Tyson? Was it for the money? What a lot of people seem not to know about Mike Tyson is that he's already a millionaire. And I don't know what's the paycheck that he got from this fight, but before he cashed in on his fight with Jake Paul, he had an estimated wealth of 10 million. I mean, he already has way more money than he and his whole family can spend for the remainder of their lifetime. And we just talked about his life and him having managed and sought redemption. And what have he become as a man and as a human being? I mean, it clearly shows in his character that he is not a man that would do it for the money. So why take him on this fight? Well, it's definitely not to add to his legacy. I mean, he said it himself, and I quote, "Legacy to me means ego. Who the fuck cares about my legacy? I'm gonna be dead soon one day." That was from the promotional interview with Jake Paul a few days before the fight. So it's definitely not to add to his legacy. But wait a minute, I didn't understand what he meant really. I mean, all what fighters want is to leave a legacy. Fighters want to be known for how heroic and ferocious they were in the battlefield. That's what they want, and if you're a fighter, you know what I'm talking about. Again, fighters want to be known for how heroic and ferocious they were in the battlefield. Whether it be a ring, whether it be a mat, whether it be a coliseum. I mean, since the beginning of time, that's what fighters really want. They want to leave a legacy. So why Mike Tyson is not worried about his legacy? Why not worry that his career would be tainted with this fight? I mean, the image of Mike Tyson that all of us have in our head is, again, bad motherfucker in the ring. But here's the thing. Him saying what he had to say about his legacy, it almost felt like the message that he's trying to convey is, I already left my mark. I don't need to prove shit to nobody. It's time to play. As if he embodied the African saying that goes, when there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. So why did he take this fight? In my opinion, to play. It's time to play. I already left my mark. I don't need to prove shit to nobody. It's time to play. I feel like Tyson wanted to do this because there is one more demon he still had to deal with. The thrill of stepping into the ring, where to him it's all melted away, where he can be himself, a natural-born killer. I mean, we've all seen a lot of fights from Tyson's past where he goes and actually hugs his opponent, helping him up, just after handing him an expedited delivery of a crushing blow to the dome, as if he's saying, nothing personal, man. I'm just doing what I love to do. And when the fight with Jake Paul presented itself, he wanted to do what he loves to do one more time. He wanted to do the thing that made him able to disconnect from this whole world and all that is in it, to travel to space, to another dimension, to his safe haven for potentially one last time. So mentally, we know Tyson was there. He was more than there. I mean, we've seen him bite his gloves during the fight like he's saying, I want to rip your head off, you little bitch. We've seen him laugh about this event in interviews and conferences like nothing to worry about. We've seen him wanting to throw down at the weigh-in. We've all seen the slap. So mentally, we know he was there 100%. But physically, he had to deal with this 58-year-old body that he is in. A body that he cannot manipulate like a 22-year-old version of himself. I mean, as soon as the fight started, we quickly realized that the 58-year-old Mike Tyson is not the Mike Tyson we know. Is not the bad motherfucker in the ring we are used to. As a strength and conditioning coach, let me tell you, a 58-year-old body has way more limitations than a 22-year-old body. That's for sure. I mean, at some instances, it seemed like he was moving like a robot, all right? And again, this is 100% objective, unbiased opinion based solely on me seeing it as a strength and conditioning coach. Not as a Mike Tyson fan, which I am. Not as a boxing fan, solely as a strength and conditioning coach. I mean, don't get me wrong. He looked exactly how a 58-year-old boxer should look like, if there was such a thing. And we've all seen his phenomenal training videos on social, right? But with age comes loss of physical abilities, loss of strength, loss of speed, loss of power. I mean, that's the law that governs our bodies, and it's applicable to all human bodies, including that of Mike Tyson. Now, let's dig a little deeper. It was obvious that there was something wrong with his right leg, because A, he was wearing a brace, which was a dead giveaway. I mean, he's not going to wear a brace as a fashion statement. This is not basketball. And B, from the second round onward, he hardly moved that leg. And it must have been hurting him a lot because in some instances during the fight, it felt like he was dragging it. He even admitted it himself after the fight when asked about it. He said that he didn't want to use it as an excuse. So it must have been at least bothering him, maybe to the point that he starts biting his gloves. Because that's when it started. The second round is when he started biting on his gloves. And interestingly enough about that, Mike Tyson said he does that a lot when asked about it after the fight. But, and here's where it gets interesting, he doesn't. Guess what is the only fight in Tyson's career where he bites his gloves during the fight? Take a guess. It was with Evander Holyfield when he bit the guy's ear off. I don't know what that could possibly mean, but anyways, he played injured, and injury means decreased performance. So whatever performance he had in the tank for that fight, what you saw was not it. So his leg was injured. Now, as a boxer, what do you use your legs for? You use them for balance, right? To balance yourself through the space you are moving in. You use them for movement, right? To move around in the space you are moving in. And most importantly, you use them to generate power. Power in punches comes from the ground up, starting with the legs. So, since Mike Tyson has an injury in his leg, we immediately know that these skills suffered. And maybe that's what stopped him from laying that knockout punch that we all were waiting for. So, let me start my conclusion with this. The fans, when they don't like a fight, the word of the street immediately becomes, it was rigged. I've heard it a million times. And as a coach, better yet as a fighter, again, I tell you, I don't see any incentive for any of them to rig this fight. Now, Jake Paul, yes, he's obnoxious, but that doesn't discredit him as a fighter. I mean, the guy wanted to establish a fighters union to advocate for better pay and conditions for fighters. That's how much he is invested in the sport. And for Mike Tyson, I think this fight was the last dance. I think after this fight, he can finally rest in peace. As for the event, it broke the internet. It crashed the servers. I mean, even Paul said it after the fight. And that was not a brag. It literally happened. And I personally suffered from that. My Netflix crashed every time I played the live feed for the fight. It's clear that this event revived the sport of boxing by jolting it when it's almost flatlined. I mean, the only fight in boxing history that's had more views than this fight is the Rumble in the Jungle. Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, 1974, Bomaye Ali. So the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight represents more than just a clash between two generations of fighters. It symbolizes a passing of the torch. And I think that's why it marked the most watched boxing event in recent history. Whether the fans realized it consciously or subconsciously, they knew that the fight represented a passing of the torch between two completely different generations. And dare I say, such event never existing in the sport of boxing. And what was beautiful about it is that it was a peaceful and respectful passing of the torch. The image of these two competitors shaking hands, hugging at the end of the fight highlights their mutual admiration, not just for each other, but for the legacy and tradition of the sport, preserving the spirit of the game for future generations. This analysis was written by Coach Hisham. Thanks for listening.